Welcome to the Low Countries Radio, a collaboration between Republic of Amsterdam Radio and the Low Countries website, celebrating Flemish and Dutch history and culture and its impact on the world today.
Hello and welcome to the Low Countries Radio. In this episode, you are going to hear an interview we recorded with Greg Shapiro. He's an American-turned-Dutch performer who has lived in the Netherlands since arriving here to be part of an English-language improv theatre group called Boom Chicago in Amsterdam. His plan was to do a one-year stint before returning to the US. That was 30 years ago. And having now had a family and established a career in the Dutch film and television industry, today Greg is a renowned public speaker, performer, actor, and author of books that recount his stories of integrating from American to Dutch culture, becoming arguably the face of American expats in the Netherlands, as well as the voice of Donald Trump in the Netherlands Second video that went globally viral a few years ago.
We totally understand. It's going to be America first. But can we just say the Netherlands second? Is that okay?
We were lucky enough to have Greg stop by our studio and talk about his life here, the US, the Netherlands, and the indelible connections between the two. Hello and welcome to Low Countries Radio. My name's Joe Egasani. I am here with Julian Smith.
Hello.
And for this episode, we have a very special guest. The extremely well-known, goes by the device, the American Netherlander, Greg Shapiro is joining us in the studio today.
Yeah. I'm very well known. I'm right here as well. You're listening now. It's exciting. Anything could happen.
So, Greg, thank you very much for joining us. Now,
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you come from and how you came to be known as the American Netherlander?
Right. I came here exactly 30 years ago, gents. I came for work, stayed for love, in a nutshell. But so I came to work with the comedy group known as Boom Chicago, which started actually in 1993. I came the second summer, 1994. Originally, like my friends, that we all knew each other from Chicago. We thought, let's just go do this crazy idea for a comedy show, a Chicago-style comedy show in Amsterdam. Surely we can get away with that for like one summer, and then we'll go back home and start taking our lives seriously. But anyway, one summer led to another summer, and 30 years later, I'm still here. So, but yeah, no, you asked about the title, the American Netherlander. Yeah, I gained my Dutch nationality through marriage to a Dutch woman in 2004. So I guess I'm celebrating 20 years of my second nationality. They let me keep both.
So 20,
passports.
20 years of Dutchman.
Yeah, and I wrote the book based on that. And and you read it, I understand. So thank you.
We were out of reading material, weren't we, Julian?
Yeah.
No, of course. It was a delight. And let's talk about the books a little bit. A couple of books, How to Be Orange, an alternative Dutch assimilation course.
Yeah.
And How to Be Dutch, the accompanying quiz.
Yes.
And they both draw on this experience of you doing the so-called inburgerings course.
Yes, the citizenship test exam. That was how I got my Dutch passport, was like, learning Dutch class, Dutch citizenship, before it was even called, an official like inburgerings, citizenship exam. But it was enough, right? And at some point I realized that the questions on the actual exam are really debatable, divisive, because the students in the class were like, well, clearly, how do you signal, a right turn when you're on a bike? In practice, the answer is like, try to do it as subtle, a gesture as possible. Whereas the correct answer, the official answer is like, no, you're supposed to make an official hand gesture to the right, but like, come on. No one does that.
It's a bit of a limp wrist action, right?
Yeah. What is like some kind of social signal? I don't know. Hard to know. I'm still one who will be on a bike path, and we're coming up to a crosswalk, and here comes a pedestrian or a mom with a little baby. little toddler. And I will stop. But then my wife is biking next to me. She just goes straight through, do normal. So, yeah, we came up with this discrepancy between what's the correct answer, but then what's the true answer? And that was the basis for, an analysis of the Dutch inburgering, assimilation experience. So that was.
And do you find that you've had a positive, negative, or indifferent response from the Dutch and expats?
Okay, wait. Because we're talking about history, right? Okay.
We will do.
So in 2013, that's when my first book came out, How to Be Orange, the alternative assimilation. And so that was the same month, I think, that this other book came out, which is Russell Shorto with Amsterdam, a history of the world's most liberal city. This is a proper history book written by a proper historian, Russell Shorto. It's one of my favorite books, one of my favorite history books, certainly. And anyway, so the reviews that came out from like Dutch reviewers, well, Mr. Shapiro seems to think he's qualified to write about Dutch society. Well, he's no Russell Shorto, let me tell you. And I didn't ask for that comparison to be made. But, Ben Coates is another one. Have you had him on?
No.
Yeah. So Why the Dutch Are Different. That was 2015. And yeah, he seems to have gone through the same kind of experience. And
I've never met Ben Coates, but I see him on Twitter. I follow him on Twitter. I think he may follow this podcast on Twitter as well.
He's great.
And it's interesting to see his posts on there because he makes insightful comments into Dutch culture. And then all the comments underneath it are people attacking him.
Yeah, a lot of Dutch haters. Yeah, practicing their English in many cases.
So I'm just wondering, like, how do you have to deal with that? When you take the piss out of Dutch culture, how does that reaction come?
Oh, good question. Yeah. I am not as active on Twitter /X. Yes, the X Twitter. I see how much traction, attention someone like Ben Coates gets online, and I don't relish that level of. Sometimes I will post stuff and I'll get a good amount of blowback, like, boo, you expat, go home. But then in general, my experience is if I just hang back, there will be another comment that will either be positive and kind of balance things out, or literally go after someone who had something mean to say, and then the debate continues. I don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
I call those the troll hunters, and I really appreciate them.
Well, it's worth going into that a little bit because in your book, you talk about the identity of Netherlanders and how it's been cited that there may not be one identity of the Netherlanders, and in reflection of the kind of comments you get in Twitter feeds and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? What is the Dutch identity? Is there a Dutch identity?
All right. Well, okay. So I think the opening quote of the 2013 book was quoting then Princess Maxima. And I mean, she got in the most trouble, right? It was 2009, I think. And she said in Dutch, her best Dutch at that point, there is no one Dutch identity. The Netherlands is too diverse to sum up into any one cliche. But yeah, I think the translation and or the sort of media distillation of that quote was there is no Dutch identity. And then I think a lot of Dutch media outlets were like, what? Who does this Argentinian, carpet bagger wannabe queen? Who does she think she is? I mean, personally, I agree with the full quote. We were just having this conversation before, we started like, oh, what is this Dutch tolerance? Like, why are the Dutch so tolerant as a culture? And then you realize like, yeah, Amsterdam, maybe the big cities, but you go outside into maybe the Bible Belt, maybe not so tolerant. So there are different areas, and I guess it's like anywhere. If you spend some time in a place, no matter how geographically small, there's diversity, from big city to small towns. There's diversity from, region to region. In the Netherlands, there's above the rivers, below the rivers. Like as soon as you spend a little time here, you start to realize, oh, there are differences aplenty.
And yet everybody has their opinion and their right to place it.
What is it in Dutch? Ik moet dat gewoon kwijt. I just have to say it. I was thinking it, and so of course I just have to say it. And if you're offended, well, that's on you.
In 2018, Greg was asked to take part in a Dutch TV show called Het Pronkstuk van Nederland, meaning the showpiece of the Netherlands, which asked a national viewing audience to vote on the most important objects in Dutch culture and history relevant to 3 categories: heritage, art, and design. One of the objects being voted on in the heritage category was the Plakkaat van Verlatingen, or the Act of Abjuration, from 1581. In this document, the provinces of the Low Countries that were in revolt against the Spanish Habsburg monarchy withdrew their loyalty from Philip II, the Spanish king. The Act of Abjuration emerged in the midst of a prolonged war that would result in an independent republic. 2 centuries after it, another group of people who were undertaking their own struggle against imperial power drew upon the Plakkaat van Verlatingen when they created their own Declaration of Independence that would become the foundation stone of the United States of America. Recently, you made an appearance on a TV show focusing on the history of the Netherlands.
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the history of the Netherlands. What did you know about the history of the Dutch? And also of Dutch and early American relations when you moved here.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Let's unpack that in 2 parts. Because well, first of all, this what I knew about Dutch stuff, culture, history when I came over here.
That wasn't from Pulp Fiction.
No. Right. Yeah. Exactly. Like from high school and from I grew up in Chicago, moved to New York, and then that's where I made the jump over to Amsterdam. So certainly when you're in New York City, there's a pretty tangible sense of of Dutch history there too, and lots of people would tell me about New York City history, New Amsterdam, connections to. I think maybe that was the first place I learned about the Dutch West India Company or the original settlers of Manhattan. So I don't think I would have heard about that in Chicago so quickly. But from my general high school, I think I learned about Anne Frank, learned about the the golden era, as they called it, which we're not calling it anymore, I guess, the colonial, awful 1600s. But that's where we learned the golden rule. Whoever has the gold makes the rules. Ha, ha, ha. But anyway, I think I knew the basics about Dutch history when I came over. Still not sure if I could place it on a map per se when I made the jump over here.
You've picked up a few things since. You appeared on a TV show in 2018.
Oh, yeah. So the
called
TV show.
Het Pronkstuk van Nederland.
Yes.
Can you tell us about it and about in particular, the Plakkaat van Verlatingen?
Let's do it, yeah.
That you spoke about.
Well, real quick, let's also say that the other categories were art was Rembrandt.
Yep. The Night Watch.
The Night Watch. Yep. And then design would have been Leeuwenhoek, the microscope.
Yep.
So those are pretty big. I was asked at that point to be on the team for the Act of Abjuration, and so they told me as an American, there were phrases in the Dutch Act of Abjuration which were using the Google Translate of the 18th century. That you can find them back in the American Declaration of Independence, and it was pretty cool, actually. They told me about it, and then on the show, they really projected these phrases in Dutch and then in English up on the wall, and you can see, yes, it's a little bit of plagiarism. Ha, ha, ha. I think I made that joke, like plakkaat van het plakkaat. Yeah, they also wanted me to be, like the Trump voice from the video, which at that point was still, like fairly viral. The America first and Netherlands second. Yes, that was my voice, it went so viral. That was back when viral meant that's a good thing. But anyway, so back in 2018, I think that's fair to say that the viral video guy at the end, you could really see Dutch people in the audience, in the live audience, react like, whoa, I knew about the effect, the influence of the microscope, knew about, this cultural significance of Rembrandt and the Night Watch, but I never realized like this obscure Dutch document actually had such an outsized impact on like history, American history, world history, if you will. So anyway, yeah, it was pretty cool. And so anyway, our team won due to whatever popular vote and the theater, live audience. So yeah, that was pretty cool. But I had to admit, I had not heard of it before that TV show.
Yeah, well, I don't think you were alone in a survey after that TV show with 5,000 respondents of the Dutch population.
Yeah,
it was found that 50% of those respondents had not heard of it, could not give an opinion on it, because they did not know about it.
Well, it's not covered in Dutch, history, Dutch secondary school or anything.
Yeah, and yet it becomes listed as this number one heritage item. So I just want to think about that in reflection of Dutch identity, Dutch culture, what we've been talking about with there not being one single one, a lot of diversity, a lot of different opinions.
Yeah.
The Plakkaat van Verlatingen is now kind of held up as more special than it was before this TV show.
Oh, yeah. There's a new exhibit at the National Archive. I've seen that. Yeah,
exactly. And it would seem to me that that recent fame is more garnered from it being older than the U.S. Declaration of Independence, rather than for what it actually was. I mean, in the Plakkaat van Verlatingen, they didn't want a republic or anything like that. They just wanted to take their loyalty from the King of Spain to someone else.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas the American Declaration of Independence is obviously about independence, about republicanism.
In the historical sense.
Yeah, in the historical. Does that tell you anything about the difference between Dutch culture and American culture?
Oh, wow. What a great question. I mean, because, we mentioned this beforehand. I know you can't call it the Dutch Declaration of Independence, as tempting as that may be. But what was it, 1581? So that would have been at the beginning of, the 80 Years' War. And, for that period in time, I think it's fair to say that, it's like saying we want to change up our loyalty to which king.
It is radical, absolutely.
Yes, it's simply not done. But, it's fair to say that in the United States, there's the Declaration of Independence, which is on display, on the National Mall in the National Capitol. In the Netherlands, the National Archives, they are, under some metro tracks near Den Haag Central Station, which is not technically the capital. I don't know. It's a nice exhibit, but a little bit hard to find. In the United States, I think, the Declaration of Independence is taught in schools, before even high school. I think you learn about it. Then there are trips, sometimes field trips, or maybe for a lot of kids, it's their first overnight trip, maybe 8th grade when you're 13, 14 years old, to go on a pilgrimage to Washington, D.C. Let's see our founding document, And so that's that's not the case here in the Netherlands quite so much. But does that speak to American identity or Dutch identity? I think it's... So I'll come at that question from two different ways, because Dutch identity there's a bescheidenheid, there's this Dutch modesty, which I'm still trying to put my finger on. But then there's also the idea of Dutch independence, radical, we want to do things differently, dwars, as the Dutch might say, just I just want to be difficult. Debate everything for the sake of debating it. That's just how conversations are fun, according to my father-in-law, for example. I have an apocryphal version of Dutch history where basically the map makers at that point, before there were Dutch map makers, maybe they were from Spain or
Belgium.
Yeah, sure. They were just drawing the maps and here are the borders, and Dutch people just kept making polders and, draining more swamp and making more land. And it's the Spanish king was like, cut that out. We've made our maps. You can't have land there. And Dutch people were like, yeah, we can. Well, then we're going to invade. And then Dutch were like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. Then we'll flood your bit and we'll keep ours above water. And so, that was
the truth.
Yeah, really. For a long time, Dutch culture has been pretty hard to understand for the rest of Europe, and they wanted to do things differently.
Absolutely, it's what happens when you put humans in a swamp.
Yeah.
And surrounded by French, Germans, and
Get
English.
out of my swamp. Yeah, I was saying the national color should be green for Shrek.
Hey, would you be happy to talk a little bit about the Pilgrims or anything like that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, man. Yeah.
Cool. Well, given your excitement, let's talk about Pilgrims.
Oh, because that relates to like politics right now.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's get into it. Do you have anything to say about the Pilgrims?
Well, I mean, from what I understand, the Pilgrims were the religious sect that was even too weird for the Netherlands, right? So they were Puritans, right?
So they came here and they were in Leiden and Amsterdam.
So they got kicked out of England, basically. They were like a religious sect or cult.
Just super hardcore Protestants.
Yeah.
The ones that would not tolerate you in the Bible Belt.
Yeah, those, yeah. Well, so then what? They tried to get to Leiden and they didn't fit in.
Found that it was too tolerant of other peoples here. Too many Jews here, too many Catholics allowed,
Catholics,
that kind of thing.
Not like Catholics.
And so got the chance to leave and went off to America. Tell us about the influence of that on the US. Did the Netherlands win out or lose out with that demographic shift of...
The Netherlands may have won by getting rid of those guys. I don't know. So you shipped them out over to the poor North America colonies. Well, so in a nutshell, and this is, I mentioned Russell Shorto before. So going back to his previous book, The Island at the Center of the World, I think the premise of that book is that American history doesn't really cover well enough the Dutch influence in Manhattan. And so the Russell Shorto book goes on to say that basically a lot of the fundamentals of what we think of as modern American culture came more from the Dutch colonies than the New England colonies, as we generally, that's the way history is kind of taught in from my experience as well, in the U.S. So if you think about what was going on in the 1600s, you had the Pilgrims coming over and landing on Plymouth Rock and taking root to setting down roots in New England. And pretty soon you had witch burnings. That's what was going on with their colonies. Meanwhile, the Dutch came over, and they were just business, but also and whatever, not an ideal colony, perhaps, since it was like a company town, basically, from the Dutch West Indies Company. Or so, as Russell Shorto said, I think that Dutch culture, yes, put business first, but it did allow for freedom of religion, freedom of immigration, a lot of freedoms, and a lot more than what was going on at that same time in Salem, Massachusetts, with the Pilgrims. Now that I would say that fundamental sort of twin influences, I mean, that's still taking part in America today. The Supreme Court right now, you've got some people who call themselves Christian nationalists, like they kind of want to go back to the Pilgrims and the more, basically banning books and burning books, and so to answer the question, did the Dutch make a good deal at the time? I don't know. It would have been nice for me if the Dutch colony, if New Amsterdam had stayed New Amsterdam.
Yeah, I feel like the answer was much better than the question.
Yeah, okay.
So you're saying that there are tenets of Dutch culture that still remain in American culture today that maybe aren't recognized that much.
Yeah.
And that they can conflict as well with the more Puritan, hardcore religious thing, and they exist side by side today.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, such as I think some of the things which you might most associate with America, such as the almighty dollar, which comes from the Dutch word daalder, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then like your boss, who's very important in America, coming from the Dutch baas.
Yep.
Some of these sort of concepts which I think people most associate with America maybe have
the
Dutch
word
roots.
Yankee.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Isn't that,
because I've always looked for any veracity behind this story, but can you just tell us about it and what the theory is?
I think Wikipedia already has there are competing theories as to the origin.
I'm happy to put an apocryphal before it.
Yeah, okay. Sure, yeah. Well, I mean, but Jan Kees sure seems like there might be something there.
So there's a Jan, a very common Dutch name, and Kees, K-E-S, and if you put them together, it's Yankee.
Yeah, and so the Native Americans were like, oh, those guys came over again. Who exactly? Yeah, those Jan Kees guys. They're all named Jan or Kees or Jan Kees.
I love it.
Or Kees Jan. Yeah. And they still are. But yeah, so that's the version I heard. I know there are different versions.
That was really great.
There's also in Amsterdam a thing called the John Adams Institute.
Oh, yeah.
Named after the original Kamala Harris, the first vice president of the United States,
right.
John Adams.
John Adams has never had that epithet attributed to him, I think. Yeah.
Before he was the vice president, he was in Amsterdam, and he had been sent up here to beg for money. I know you guys in America, love talking about your revolt against the Brits and becoming independent from them, but I think the Netherlands also did contribute to that in some way. Do you know much about that, or is that taught at all in American school?
Not as much. It's not taught very much, no. And yet, I think it's of historical record or historical note that I think what the Netherlands was the first country to recognize the independent nation of the United States of America. That's a pretty big deal, especially when they're basically neighbors of of England at that point. That was a pretty daring move.
Just to interrupt quickly, Greg here is referencing the 1776 cannon salute that the Dutch governor on the Caribbean island of St. Eustatius gave in response to the warship Andrew Doria, which was sailing under the flag of the newly independent USA. This is seen to be the first recognition given to the nascent US by a foreign state. A pretty big moment. Now back to the conversation.
John Adams, as I understand, was the first ambassador. And as it happens, there's an award banquet coming up, the Netherlands America Foundation. And every year they give away an award, the Adams van Brekel Award, recognizing both ambassadors. And so it's a great tradition. There's every year, there's like the Dutch-America Friendship Treaty that they celebrate around the 19th, 20th of April. So it's a big deal.
It's a bit of a daft name, though.
Daft. Ha ha ha. Yes, we laugh at that.
Yeah, it's an amazingly deep relationship. And there is one other one that is always worth pointing out, because we feel that in American identity, to point out that the first US president actually born with American citizenship.
Oh, yeah.
Was Martin van Buren.
Van Buren.
Van Buren,
yeah.
Who is the only US president who was born not speaking English at home. His mother tongue was Dutch.
Yeah. Right. Well, I mean, from the colony, I guess, right? I don't know much about him still. Certainly not taught that well.
Me either. I was hoping you could inform us.
Van Buren, he's got a great street in downtown Chicago named after him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but, we can go a little bit further and go to the Roosevelts. So Teddy Roosevelt, Theodore, then Franklin Delano Roosevelt. FDR, his roots were also, right? Roosevelt. That his roots were, I don't think he grew up speaking Dutch, but he spoke some Dutch, I think. And you could even hear that sometimes in the fireside chats if you go back and listen to the way he enunciates. And you could almost hear, it's New York, it's upper East Coast kind of accent, but I think I hear a little bit of other accent going on in there. So that was all the FDR.
After some years here, Greg went through the inburgeringscursus, the assimilation or integration course required to become a Dutch citizen. Completing this completed his transformation into becoming the American Netherlander. We asked him about that process, which inspired his first books, and also about some Dutch cultural peculiarities that have stood out to him over the years, such as the quirks of the national anthem and the frequently heard expression, doe normaal. Be normal.
in my citizenship course, we got to learn how to sing the Dutch national anthem. And here I was learning Dutch at the time, right? So, the opening line is, Wilhelmus van Nassau, ben ik van Duitse bloed. And, translating into English, I'm William, founder of your country, and van Duitse bloed. And by the way, I'm German. And so, I raised my hand like, is that what they're saying? Or am I understanding it wrong? Now, I got a whole long story about how this text is from historically, significant text, which was just about, it was similar to Het Plakkaat van Verlating, back from the 1580s, the origin of the 80 Years' War of Dutch independence. And so there's more to the text, but it's just the first stanza that we sing as the Dutch national anthem. And my instructor even said it doesn't technically mean Dutch. It meant Dietse, which then meant, German or Dutch. It could be either okay, van Nassau. He's from Nassau. Where's that? Well, let's look it up. Even on the 16th century maps. Yeah, that was over the border. That was in Germany. Okay. But so then he talks about, the ending line of that first stanza of the current Dutch national anthem is my allegiance for all time. I pledge to the King of Spain. And at Olympic Games or the European Cup, and this is the intro song for the Dutch national team, you can imagine why other countries might be like, what nation was that exactly? They mentioned Germany, they mentioned Spain, and then the closest they come to getting to the Dutch identity would be Prins van Oranje, and then Oranje is orange. That's a city in France. So actually 3 different countries are referenced. And then at some point, with my limited knowledge of Dutch history, I realized, what do those 3 countries have in common? There are only 3 countries that have ever invaded and occupied the Netherlands. And there are those 3 countries making this not so much an anthem as a self-hating checklist. And maybe that explains why Dutch national teams do so poorly in international competitions. They start out every game with oh yeah, we suck. It's just a theory.
Let's move on from history a little bit and start talking more about current cultural nuances, and especially those that are fascinating for those of us who didn't grow up here. What are some of your favorite Dutch cultural specificities or nuances that stand out starkly against American cultural norms? So,
okay, now we just talked about the Dutch national anthem, and I think I went out on a limb talking about Dutch national teams doing poorly. Okay. We're about to have the European Championships or whatever, the European Cup tournament. I would be happy if I could be proved wrong and the Dutch team wins it all like they did back in 1988, and they still talk about it. But so that said, the way that Dutch culture can be all about do normal, unless it's a specific date on the calendar that is kind of unique, in America, like USA, whether it's King's Day, then you dress up in orange and get drunk, wasted all day on the street. If it's Carnival in certain parts of the Netherlands, on Mardi Gras, you go out and you go, it's been described as cosplay for racists, but fine. You go out into the party shop and rent the most outlandish outfit and go. But if it's the World Cup or the European Cup, it's quite common, to put on face paint and dress up as an orange lion and maybe even go to work that way. So that contrasted to the very straight-laced sort of do normal presence, in the workplace or in the streets every other day, of the year. That to me is that contrast, I think, is kind of is Dutch or bipolar in a way. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about do normal and the full expression?
Well, so as I understood it, there's 2 different interpretations of do normal. One is sort of be humble, which is more Calvinistic. But the other one is a bit more tolerant, Doe maar gewoon, je bent al gek genoeg. So you're already crazy enough as it is. And, but either interpretation seems to have the same result, which is there's a built-in Dutch bullshit detector. Don't go putting on airs. Don't go trying to hype yourself up. That is somehow there's this allergic attitude to that, and where does that come from? I still don't really know, but yeah, there's something to this idea of this Dutch modesty, or keeping it real, allergic to American styles of hype, which is bizarre that the Boom Chicago Theater has been as much of a success. But certainly, step number one: make fun of America first, America first, and then you can make fun of others. So yeah.
Your kids are half Dutch. What have you learned about the national culture through raising them with your Dutch wife?
We've got visits where my American family will come visit over here, and maybe they'll raise eyebrows or sometimes jaw drops, based on how we're raising our kids or the choices we make, the stories we read, Grandma, do you want to read us a story? Great. What are you reading? It's called Sammy the Super Sperm, and you follow the journey of a sperm through the sexual organs of both into the womb. And there's my mom being like, I don't think this is appropriate. That's what we call Dutch direct versus Midwest nice. And it's not always a good compatible situation.
Yeah, that must have created quite a few moments of cultural education, we'll say, in the household. And how has your perspective changed on Dutch cultural things? Do you still see some of these things as quirky, or do you now see them as normal? Like, if you go back to the US, are you now finding that you have transitioned to...
That's a good point, honestly. I think, I somehow learned how much I might have... acclimated to Dutch sentiments, or behaviors when I go back to, the U.S. and specifically the Midwest, where they have Midwest nice, which is, I might have something I'm thinking about you, but I will either mutter it under my breath or I will keep it, behind my eye roll and not say it. But, Dutch direct will just lay it all out, whatever you're thinking, right on the table. Yeah, like we couldn't decide on what to do, and everybody's being too polite. Like, well, if you want to do that, then I don't need to go there. We're gonna. At some point, I was just like, why can't you just say what you want? And it's, why does everybody have to be so over polite? And like in the supermarket, where the aisles are already so wide in America, and these shopping carts are so big, someone came close to hitting my shopping cart with their shopping cart. No bodies were touching, but their stuff was about to touch my stuff. And they were like, oh, I'm so sorry. But the Dutchman in me was like, shut up. No harm, no foul. Like, don't take time out of my day. I would have had to get out of your way because you bumped me in the shoulder if this was in a Dutch supermarket. I think I've become more Dutch direct from living over here. That's true.
Is that something that you feel not just Americans, but other cultures and people could learn from the Dutch? Is that something that you think can help a culture, or it hinders the directness?
Dutch direct is an indirect way of saying pretty rude. It certainly can get, I think, Dutch business people in trouble when they travel, communicate with other cultures, and sometimes it's foreign people coming to visit here or work here. Sometimes it's Dutch people having to work across borders internationally and not realizing that Dutch norms and values are maybe a little bit more direct and in your face than other people. And then I even was told of a Dutch woman was living in New York, and she was helping some Dutch business people who wanted to make a pitch for their startup to an American company. So they got some lessons from American pitch coaches. But in America, they call it the negativity sandwich. It's like, hey, that was great. Here's a little something negative. But in the end, it was really good job. Dutch people just didn't hear that. They were like, where was the criticism? We paid them to give us feedback, and I didn't even hear it. They just didn't hear it. They were expecting, you suck, here's why. And anything nice to sandwich it to cushion the blow was just
it's a waste of time.
Counterproductive.
And are there any other things you feel that U.S. society can learn from the Netherlands?
Golly. Well, I mean, it's funny how, politically speaking, it seems like the trajectory seems to be, going to the right. In America, someone described America as like junkie that's about to relapse. I don't know.
It could be good for your comedy career, though.
Oh my God! As I like to say, yeah, when people say, "Oh, I bet you can't wait." I bet you can't wait for Trump to get back in the White House so you can make more Trump jokes. My answer is the same thing as the Dutch Prime Minister said to Trump in the White House. No. Like, I'll be fine. But I think even in the Dutch political circles and Dutch politics was just, which just gave huge electoral victories to, Geert Wilders and the right wing, or I guess as they're calling them, radical right now, more like in mainstream news. I think even like Geert Wilders, right-wing Dutch government would still look at Trump in the White House again, and the things that he says he wants to do, that would like pull out of NATO, for example, like that would be a lot of, as the Dutch call it, ophef, a lot of a shock to the system that would probably hurt the almighty dollar, the almighty economy. So things that maybe in a way the United States could learn from the Netherlands right now. Do normal. Boring is sexy.
How about the other way around? What can the Dutch learn from America?
Well, like we were just talking about giving a pitch coach or something. Yeah, the whole Dutch bescheidenheid and the Dutch modesty, I think, is self-defeating. I think more people should know how awesome Dutch innovation is.
In Greg's books, he presents the reader with alternative questions which he thinks should be on the Dutch citizenship test. With this in mind, and without notice, we thought we might spring our own little quiz on Greg ourselves, bringing out some classically and culturally important Dutch food items. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold up specific objects which I think in my time here I've come to realize are very important to Dutch culture. I would like you to describe those objects for our listeners and then tell us what they mean to you as an American and what they mean to you as a Netherlander.
Oh, this is going to be good.
But I did go to probably the most common supermarket in the Netherlands, and I picked up some goodies. Here is the first item.
Okay. Oh, not just mayonnaise. Zaanse mayonnaise. Yes, from Zaandam, apparently, where they have the best kind of mayonnaise. Yeah, it's Dutch mayonnaise. It's true what they said in Pulp Fiction. Yeah, they drown him in that. They with the frites, First time I had fries with mayonnaise, it felt like, oh, they're not oily and greasy enough as it is. You want to put more grease on them, but then I tried it, which is apparently Belgian. I got it, full credit where it is due, but. The Netherlands puts a lot of mayonnaise on everything.
Is it a nature-nurture thing as someone with Dutch kids?
Yeah. I think my kids, honestly, they like ketchup more. Well, if we go out to a Dutch restaurant, we know as when we're ordering the food, don't forget the ketchup, preferably American style Heinz ketchup.
As Australians, we won't tell you what we ask for ketchup with. Great. The next thing.
Oh, this is brilliant. And Calvé pindakaas. That's the Dutch brand. Pindakaas, peanut cheese, or if you will, peanut butter. It seems like butter is generally supposed to be spreadable. Cheese is either you slice it or you spread it. It seems like the Dutch naming committee didn't really do their homework, I gotta say.
Have you ever known a group of people in their middle age to as regularly eat peanut butter sandwiches for lunch?
I mean, it's peanut butter is pretty popular in America as well as in the Netherlands. Thank goodness. If you go to France, if you go from America to France and you look for peanut butter, you're like out of luck. You can find it maybe at a health food store, but and it's getting more and more common so Dutch people will eat their sandwiches with peanut butter and like chocolate sprinkles. Like the hagelslag. Yeah, but it's amazing when you put like the American sweet ingredient of jam or jelly on a peanut butter. Make your peanut butter jelly sandwich. universally, I don't know any Dutch person who has looked at that combination and said, "Oh, that's palatable." No, it's revolting to any and all Dutch people.
So to chime in for 1 second, I feel that all the time when you get a sausage and broodje, a sausage roll, which is also common between Australia and the Netherlands.
Okay.
But in Australia, everyone puts tomato sauce, ketchup on a sausage roll.
Oh, yeah.
But if you go to a Dutch bakery and you ask for ketchup with your sausage and broodje, they look at you like you've committed some mortal sin. Like, who is this person?
You can even order it in a restaurant. Like, I want a sausage roll and some ketchup, and they'll bring you the sausage roll. And if you say, "Oh, I also wanted ketchup," they will say, "You don't want that." You're wrong. The customer is always wrong.
Brought it out already, but could you tell our listeners what you were looking at there?
Yay, that's the hagelslag.
So what is hagelslag?
Milk chocolate. Well, so slag is rain or hail, right? So it's chocolate hail from the... here it's depicted as falling out of the canopy of a hot air balloon. So it's... little mouse poops from the sky. You make yourself a big old piece of sloppy Dutch bread slapped with so much peanut cheese that you almost can't fit anymore. And then you just blanket that whole thing with these little chocolate bits, chocolate hail, from above. And of course it spills everywhere. And at some point you cannot distinguish from little milk chocolate sprinkles to mouse poops. And then, don't eat them is all I can say. Just don't take the chance.
The other version I got, muisjes.
Oh, my goodness. Beschuit met muisjes, right? So, it's not just bread, but it's like biscuits, not
like
cookies, but...
dry biscuit.
Yeah,
rusk.
Is it rusk? Oh, yeah, there we go. So that's the word we were missing. And then on top of it, you've got these, I think they're anise seeds. They're candy coated licorice seeds, basically, and you can either get them in blue and white or in pink and white. And here we're looking at the pink and white version, so that would mean it's a girl, and it's no gender reveal party. It's just basically if there's a birth and you've got a healthy boy or a healthy girl, then you get the corresponding color of beschuit met muisjes, rusk with candy covered licorice seeds. Very Dutch. Typical Dutch.
And if it's a royal baby, they make orange ones.
Oh yeah. I've rarely seen those, but who knows?
Haven't had a royal baby yet.
Amalia, she's getting there. By the way, they have a nutrition code on here, a Nutri-Score on the hagelslag, the chocolate sprinkles. That's E.
That's excellent, right?
For you. No, it's not a good Nutri-Score. It's 0 out of 5, basically. And then you get the beschuit met muisjes. Conveniently, they don't even have a Nutri-Score on there. Don't worry about it. Just don't worry about it.
Hey, look, there's one other item. I don't know if you especially just want to talk about the context in which you might get one of these.
Yeah. Hey, so, oh my goodness. This is a Lotus cookie or biscuit. And it says it's the Biscoff. It's the original speculoos, right? That's, a little packet like this.
You can have one of these, by the way, but only one.
I don't really want one. They make my mouth feel sad.
So what is it? What's speculoos?
What is speculoos, actually? It's kind of a gingerbread, I guess. It's a flavoring that is, They even have like a speculoos spread, which was an alternative to peanut butter. I think you can still buy it. Even it was exported to the U.S. at one point. And I had relatives that were like, oh, we heard about this thing you're exporting. Let's give it a try. I did not catch on.
Right.
But gingerbread, little gingerbread cookies. They come with a lot of typical Dutch coffee, or as they call it, een bakkie troost. Or, colloquially, it is a little cup of comfort. And you get a little cookie to go with it. It's funny, you go across the border into Belgium, for example, and it's like, oh, we're not going to give you any kind of filter coffee, or like, we're going to give you a special espresso coffee just for you, and like a chocolate, that we picked out just for you. And here you get, coffee from the apparaat, from the machine, and a little speculoos, little gingerbread cookie. And you're welcome.
So in your book, The American Netherlander, you end one of the sections with a fabulous poem, which is titled The Dutch Touch.
The Dutch Touch.
Where I think you do your bit to try to big up some of the achievements of the Netherlands.
Yes, yeah, to talk them up, to big them up. And, there are so many examples, but I thought, let's figure the ones that I can make rhyme, and I'll put those in the book.
Because in our other podcast we make called History of the Netherlands, well, we have a segment called I Bet You Didn't Know That Was Dutch, where we find inventions and things which people don't know actually have Dutch roots. So this just really tickled my fancy. So if you wouldn't mind sharing it with us, that would be fantastic.
Okay. The Netherlands, you may know us from Pulp Fiction, Ocean's 12, that one scene from that one Spider-Man movie that was clearly not filmed in the actual Netherlands, but there are Dutch influences all over the world, many of which you might not have noticed. And a lot of them are actually hiding in plain sight. A lot of people don't know these, including a lot of Dutch people. So if only we had some list, preferably in rhyme. Well, here we go. An ode to Dutch stuff, starting with the artwork hanging on your wall, the long life light bulb in your hall, carrots that are orange. Who knew? And Wi-Fi, that's credited to the Dutch too. The microscope, the telescope, for some reason the name of a game of jump rope, the book of maps known as the Atlas, the inventor of the word podcast, thermometers that use mercury, the origin of the dollar currency, the LED on your TV screen, Manhattan, the cheapest real estate deal we've ever seen, half the place names in New York City, the word shoe, the word cookie, Andre Kuipers, the bald guy up in space, Yankee from the Dutch names Jan and Kees, Ketel One vodka and the origin of brandy, and Drop, the world's most disgusting candy. The ones who made the first CDs, and that scene from Pulp Fiction, Royale with cheese. The first pump trucks for fires that were fighted. The eye chart to find out if you're nearsighted. The first operational submarine, Senseo, that crappy coffee machine. Bugaboo, Van Moof, with frames that are big. We transfer, like you send it, but free, up to 2 gig. Sends the umbrella with windproof design. Albertsons, the sons of Albert Heijn. Lady Melisandre on Game of Thrones. And Dario, the one slipping Khaleesi the bone. Pendulum clocks for keeping the time. The ICC court for international crime. Miffy, the bunny so cute you could eat. And yes, also Zwarte Piet. DJ Chesto, Mata Hari, the world's first speeding camera, sorry, the ones who discovered New Zealand, the inspiration, so they say, for James Bond, Basic Instinct, RoboCop, Speed, Capitalism, an economic model based on greed, Philips, Shell, KLM, AkzoNobel, DSM, Unilever, Heineken, Anne Frank, and Van Halen. The origin of the Olympic torch, Hutspot, a dish that looks like blorch, Tony Chocolonely, guaranteed slave-free, keeping Manhattan safe from the sea, people who are statistically the world's most tall, food and women served out of a wall, the tulip fields, the tourists trample, the bad guy from The Fugitive, you switch the samples, Doutzen Kroes, skater Sven Kramer, the passenger who took out the underwear bomber, Blade Runner baddie Rutger Hauer, crappy music by Frans Bauer, Dutch islands in the shape of a palm, Tom Tom, the former colony Suriname, MC Escher, Hieronymus Bosch, Rembrandt, Vincent van Gogh, the one-time owners of Ben & Jerry's, legal gay marriage for when Harry met Larry, Erasmus, Spinoza, René Descartes, and Michael van Gerwen, the world champion of darts. The first ever fair trade coffee, the Netherlands' second video, starring me, the number 2 agri-exporter on the planet, and if your river overflows, the Dutch will damn it. In total, they've offered the world so much, but if you take credit, then you're not truly Dutch.
Amazing.
That was so cool. Thank you very much.
Is that good?
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's
All
so good.
righty then. Please come see Leaving Trumpland 2.0 coming to the Netherlands this fall.
Yeah, is there any way else which you would like to plug yourself? If people want to find you, if they want to see more of what you do, how can we do that?
Yes, thank you so much for having me on the show. If you want more about, gregshapiro.nl, just go to gregshapiro.nl. The book that I just read from was The American Netherlander, and that is like a compendium of the first 2 books, actually. But you can still find on the shelves How to Be Dutch, the quiz. This fall, I'm doing shows at Boom Chicago about the U.S. election, and I'm touring the Netherlands with my own show about the U.S. election, Leaving Trumpland 2.0.
Greg Shapiro, thank you so much, the American Netherlander, coming in today to speak to us about all things American Netherlands related.
Do you want to know more about Flemish and Dutch history and culture? Visit www.the-low-countries.com. This podcast is made by Republic of Amsterdam Radio.